Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to continue part two, speaking about Tel Aviv. I'm going to share my screen and give my second introduction with it. And as I always say, and I'm going to repeat again, I think it's so beautiful to start your mornings learning Torah, learning about Eretz Yisrael, because it gives a boost. It's great for me. It's great for you. So thank you for taking the time out to do that. So the continuation of Tel Aviv. This picture should look familiar, and for those of you that are new, I'm going to be reviewing. This is where I got married. Here's me under the canopy, and it was really, really gorgeous where I got married, and my in-laws used to live here. Hi, Ellen. Good morning. And then they moved to Tel Aviv, and I was upset when they moved to Tel Aviv, and I said, no, how could they live there? And I decided Tel Aviv is a part of Eretz Yisrael. And good morning, Ellen. We just started. Tel Aviv is a part of Eretz Yisrael. I need to learn to love it. And what I'm going to share this week are things that shocked me about it. And when I learned them, I wanted to write it on my family chat, but I was like too embarrassed. And then I just told my mother-in-law and father-in-law, I said, guess what I learned about Tel Aviv? They're like, tell us. So that's what I'm going to tell you today. We're going to focus on, if I had to give a one-liner, what shocked Adele to learn about Tel Aviv. So our goals are, 1, what earned Tel Aviv its place of honor on the UNESCO World Heritage Site? Where can we find Tanakh in unexpected places in Tel Aviv? And what is Tel Aviv's symbol? And of course, new places to visit in Tel Aviv. I haven't even been at all my recommendations I'm going to give this week. I want to go straight to Tel Aviv and go do the things I'm going to recommend. So maybe you'll come to Israel, we could do it together. And the larger question, which we a little bit spoke about last week, to what degree should we preserve memories and artifacts from the past? So some review. We said Tel Aviv was started by 66 families who had this vision that we want to start the first Hebrew city. What does that mean? Everything's going to be done in Hebrew. The people that build the city are going to be Jewish. The language of instruction in school is going to be Hebrew. The language of speech in shul is going to be Hebrew. And this is a picture of them. They were given a lottery on a seashell, and this is what Tel Aviv used to look like, sand. Then slowly, they started building it up. Pictured here is very famous, the Hebrew Gymnasium, which is a high school. And today we said it's destroyed. Now it's a big tower, which is the first size skyscraper in Israel. We also said a very unique feature about Tel Aviv is it's named after people, and you can get an entire education in Zionism from reading the street names. And we spoke a little bit about a water tower, which was also modern, that they had pipes and an efficient way to get water. And this is the tower where the first Hebrew school stood. We also said that if you go inside the tower, it's good rain or shine. You could see the beautiful mosaic that Nachum Gutman made, which talks about the different stages of Tel Aviv. And you can do really fun things with the kids, scavenger hunts, and all kinds of stuff. My head is always kid-oriented because I think if something is fun for kids, it'll be fun for adults. You have to target them. So the first question I want to talk about is what earned Tel Aviv its place of honor? Reasons why people come to Tel Aviv. So take a minute and think about why people come to Tel Aviv. These were the following reasons that I came up with. I said the beach. That's a big one. It's a really beautiful beach, and beaches in Israel are free. I'll assume, I guess, they would have to pay for a beach, because in America you have to pay for a beach, especially now that none of the beaches are free in New Jersey, at least. But in Israel, the beach is free, unless you want to rent a chair or something. People come for technology. It's known as tons of technology hub, tons of startups. People come for business reasons. Google has offices there, Facebook. It really is the center of businesses. Bars is another one. When I used to guide Birthright, they have this big thing they call leisure night, night out. They love going to the bars, and everyone loves going to Tel Aviv. And I think one of the reasons why people love going to Tel Aviv is its reputation. Tel Aviv has a reputation of being this really, really cool city. So people want a part of it. People want to be part of the action and excitement. These are the reasons why people come to Tel Aviv. But none of these reasons are the reason why Tel Aviv in 2003 was given this place of honor in the world that the United Nations said Tel Aviv is a World Heritage Site. We think everyone in the world should come see it because it preserves certain things that we could only see here, or at least see here in a very unique way. Not for any of these reasons. The reason was very surprising to me when I learned it, might be surprising to you. The reason why Tel Aviv earned its place of honor is because of architecture. Architecture. Tel Aviv started out with small houses. We see the small house belonged to a man that then became the first mayor of Tel Aviv. And the style of building was influenced by local Arab style or what they saw in Europe. And then in the late 1800s, so people coming to Israel, and before Israel, we'll talk about the world style of building, that they said, you know what, we happen to really like the classical way of building with arches and pillars, and let's build that way. And what they call it, new classical, because it was classical, but no. And if you look at this building, for all you know, it could be a Roman temple, but it's not. And this is the way people started to build. And then when Jews made Aliyah and were coming to Israel, they said, let's take this style, and they called it eclectic. We'll take everything from everywhere. We'll build arches and capitals and vaults and mix the East and the West and mosaics and ceramics. Here's an example of something you can find in Tel Aviv. We're going to be talking more about this later. This doesn't look like it would be in Tel Aviv. It looks like in Europe somewhere. But this was the style. We said we want to go back to the old way of building, which I think is really, really pretty. And then what happened in the wider world, people started to ask themselves, who needs all of this? Why do we need arches and vaults? We have cement and steel. Now, the reason why people used to have arches is if they want to hold up the ceiling and they don't know how, and they want to make it a certain length, that's what they would use. But we don't need that anymore. And they said, we want to make a new style that's fitting for every place in the world with modern materials. And we'll call it the modern international style. So this was the new type of architecture that came about. And I'd say the two main characteristics was it was functionalist and minimalist. And one of the places where they learned this style was in Germany. There was a school called Bauhaus, and they learned the modern international style. And the school was around until 1933, when the Nazis rose to power. They closed the school. They said, well, we're not interested in it. And in 1933, there was also a migration of Jews to Israel because the Nazis did not make life easy for the Jews to say it in a light way. So there was something known as the Fifth Aliyah, which was the biggest Aliyah of German Jews to Israel. And when there's so many Jews making Aliyah, there is a desperate need for housing. And they wanted as many houses as possible. They want to build as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible. So a lot of the Jews that came, not a lot, but enough, they came from the Bauhaus school. So they had a background in building. And they said, what style is more fitting than the modern international style? That's how we want to build all the houses. And today, the names are used interchangeably, modern, international, and Bauhaus. And we're going to see in a few minutes some examples of what it looked like, because I could talk about it in theory, which is all nice, but let's actually see. And if you go to Tel Aviv, you could see it in real life. Entire streets in Tel Aviv are built in this style. Now, there are also houses like this in Haifa, in Jerusalem. In Miami, there's actually also a large collection, believe it or not. So why was Tel Aviv given this honor for the World Heritage Site? Because of the style. Why not Haifa? Haifa's collections are actually bigger. Why not Miami? And the reason is because in Tel Aviv, because entire streets are built in this way, you have a very centered collection. You don't have to go far to all corners of the city to see it. So they said it's very unique that you have so much in one area. Let's give Tel Aviv this honor. And I will add, and we'll see when we see examples, they're not particularly pretty. They're renovated now, at least the ones I'm going to show you. So it looks nicer, but you're going to look at it and be like, huh? This is the house that gets such an honor. So it has nothing to do with the beauty of it. It has to do with the fact that there was a turning point in time in the history of world architecture, a world revolution that said, this is the new way we're going to build in the world. And in Tel Aviv, we have a large representation of it. So it has nothing to do with whether you like the style or not. Also, that's a matter of personal taste. It has to do with this turning point that Tel Aviv got. Now let's see some of these houses. So first, I want to talk about the eclectic style, where we said in the 1920s, these were the houses built. This is the house known as the Pagoda House. And all of these things I'm going to show you are walking distance to each other, which is really cool. You can have a tour just of seeing architecture. And it doesn't look like it belongs in Israel. It doesn't look like it's even built in Israel. It's using elements from East, West, the old classical, all together in one. Here's a zoom in of it. Now I want to talk about the Bauhaus style. So this is a typical example, and it looks pretty uniformed. I want you to notice, I'm going to point out a few features that a lot of them have. So notice the pillars on the bottom row. This is one of the features to have it propped up on pillars, because they wanted to have greener areas for the people on the bottom so they could have gardens. Now it's used as stores. Notice that the roof is flat. We're going to talk about a flat roof in a minute. So this is a typical Bauhaus style. Here's another one. This one I really like. It's called the thermometer building. And notice the windows. So this is actually windows, I think where the staircase is. And the windows are pretty small, and there's a lot of concrete. The building's small windows. Actually, in Europe, when this style was used, the windows were huge. Why? Because in Europe, it's colder and they want a lot of light to come in and the sun to shine in. But in Tel Aviv, it's really hot. So they said, we don't want so much light. We don't want so much heat. Let's make the windows smaller. So it happens to be that one of the features here in Israel is smaller windows, and we'll see that in other places. Here's another example. So this one I look at it, I'm like, really? Tel Aviv 1? Look at this building. It's so ugly. But other people might think it's pretty. I just don't particularly love it. And the roof is flat. The reason why the roof is flat instead of triangle is because they wanted it to be a meeting place for people. Originally, they wanted a garden to be on the roof, but they never really had gardens. They would do laundry there sometimes, and the people of the building would meet together. Here's another example. And you notice the similarity in all of the houses. Another one, again, we see that it's built on pillars, so it can leave some green space on the bottom. And another one. So they have similarities, all of the Bauhaus style houses. It's another one. Tel Aviv has a nickname, the White City. Now, when you hear White City, a few things come to mind. One, maybe from looking at the picture, I'm kind of bringing you in a certain direction. You might think of a lot of lights that similar to New York. Maybe Tel Aviv is kind of the city that never sleeps, and that was always lights on all the time. So maybe it's called the White City because of all the lights. Maybe it's called the White City because it's very clean and white. Maybe it's called the White City because people are pulling all-nighters. They're up all the time. So those are all cute suggestions that I just gave, but they're all wrong. The reason why Tel Aviv has the nickname of the White City is if you think about the color that was dominant in the Bauhaus buildings, there was a lot of white. Now, it's not a feature of Bauhaus buildings to be white, but they just all happen to be. So they said, because there's so many Bauhaus buildings in Tel Aviv, we'll call Tel Aviv the White City. And they have every year in the beginning of June, or the end of June, beginning of the summer, this week where they have Laila Lavan, like a white night, all-nighters, where the museums open late and there's tons of festivals and music and things in the street. And I'd say if you're planning a trip to Tel Aviv and you know this, well, now you do, this would be a really great time to go and visit. It's really cool that they take advantage. They said, we have this city. The city is very unique and has this reputation. Let's make a week where we celebrate it. So that's something they have in Tel Aviv. Also, they have the Bauhaus Center, where if you visit this center, they have tours. So this is one of the reasons why I want to go to Tel Aviv. I want to join one of these tours where they'll take you around. The tour focuses on the Bauhaus architecture, and they'll take you to some of the buildings I just showed and go even more detailed into the different features. This is great if you like architecture, and even if you don't, it just widens your horizon. I'm not an art major. I don't know a particular large amount of architecture, but it's just cool because it makes your world wider. So that's something that they offer. They have a store, they have books, lectures, galleries. So they have a whole center dedicated to this type of architecture in Tel Aviv, which is really cool to know. So that's idea number one of something you could do. Moving along, where can we find Tanakh in unexpected places? This is a picture that I took a few months ago. You don't see me in the picture because I'm taking it. I'm taking it from a bench. I'm sitting and eating lunch. And my husband usually calls me around 1:30 every day after he has lunch to check in to see how I'm doing. He tells me how he's doing. And I took this picture, and this is what I wrote. I checked on my phone in the WhatsApp. I wrote, and this is where I had lunch today on a nearby bench. It was beautiful. And they said, wow, it was so pretty. Where are you? I said, I'm in the Haganah Museum. I have a separate Zoom on that. And in museums, you're not allowed to eat. And I could have like snuck the food, but I said, no, what do you mean? I'm a representative, especially I'm a tour guide. I'm going to respect the museum, even though it was like a peach that I wanted to eat or a grape. I said, I'm not going to eat in the museum. I went downstairs. I told the front desk, I said, I was here already. I'm just leaving to go eat and I'm going to come back. And well, actually, now I should be even happier. One, because I had a beautiful experience looking at this fountain, and two, because now it gave me, I didn't know then, but a great new topic to talk about. Have lunch on the bench, enjoyed it, finished, went back to the museum, didn't think of it. And the only reason why I didn't delete this picture is because who deletes their photos? You just leave it on your phone. We have a lot of memory, it adds up. And now I'm going to talk about why that photograph was significant. So if we go back to the days of Achuzat Bayit, when Tel Aviv was called Achuzat Bayit, we have smaller houses, and the way they got water was from a water tower. Now, 40 years, Tel Aviv in 1949 is celebrating 40 years since the founding of the city. And the people say to themselves, wow, Tel Aviv is so big and modern. Who needs this water tower anymore? It just takes up space. Let's just destroy it. And they did, and they got rid of it. And they said, oh, well, we want to remember this. It seems to be a theme in Tel Aviv of destroying important things, right? They destroyed the original high school, and then they're destroying this water tower. They said, we'll make a small memorial so people know that the water tower once stood here. And I didn't investigate further. You would think that someone who is so involved in history and in learning about Israel, when I see a beautiful fountain and then I see a memorial, I'll get up and I'll go read it and see what it has to do and learn more. But I think I had an overload from what I was learning about the Haganah. So I didn't go and learn. And now I'm going to say in retrospect, I wish I had, because my experience eating lunch on that bench by the beautiful fountain would have been so much more powerful had I known all of this then. But I know it now, so I can go back and have lunch there again. So they have this memorial, and listed are the 66 families that started Tel Aviv. So they thought that was an appropriate place to do it. Now, on the other side of it, they have this plaque, you would call it, with a pasuk on the bottom. And it's a little bit hard to see, but just similar to the mosaic in the museum, we see the stages of Tel Aviv. Here, people have wheelbarrows, they're working in the sand to build it. Then this you should recognize from last week is the school. Here's the water tower. Here is Dizengoff's house that we keep showing on the sand. And here's Tel Aviv, a ready modern city. So to zoom out, I'm on the right side eating lunch. Here's the fountain. Here's the memorial, the names on one side and the stages of Tel Aviv on the other. And why is there a fountain here? So for a very significant reason. They said, well, the water tower stood here, so let's put water here. And they make sure there's always water flowing to commemorate the fact that that's where the water tower once stood. And I think it's really powerful knowing all of this, because this topic I'm talking about today, it brings up so many themes and ideas, and we're going to touch on it more a little bit later, about preservation and continuity and the past and the present and the future. And all of this, maybe when I was eating lunch, I could have sat and thought about that, and it would have made my day that much more meaningful had I known all this, but I didn't know any of it then, and now I do. So it's like I was like encouraging myself and everyone listening to learn history, especially about Eclectic Style, because it just really, really enriches our life. So that was, this is a picture of it. Now, when I looked at this memorial, something caught my eye. What caught my eye? What caught my eye is that there is a pasuk. I said, what? A pasuk from the Tanakh in Tel Aviv? Tel Aviv today has a reputation of being this secular city where everything goes, not a lot of kosher food, very left-wing. That's the reputation Tel Aviv had. That's not what it was founded on. And the city has so much more, right? We started out saying all this architecture it has. Tel Aviv, we shouldn't limit it and say it's only this. It has a lot to it. So I said, wow, this is so interesting. There's a pasuk. Let me look into the pasuk further. And one thing led to the next. And I saw that this is not the only place that has this pasuk, which is very significant. First, I want to talk about what the pasuk is. So there's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu that says, Od evnech v'nivnet betulat Yisrael, od ta'ati tupayich v'yetzat m'chom esachakim. That God, the Navi, through Yirmiyahu, is comforting Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael is in Galut, and God says, I will build you up again and you will be built. And what the Chachamim explain, they say this is referring to the third Beit HaMikdash, that the first two were destroyed, but the third one Hashem is going to build, so to speak, and it's not going to be destroyed. Another explanation could be that Bnei Israel are destroyed, they're scattered among the nations, but God is saying he's going to collect them all and rebuild them. And this is very significant to connect to Tel Aviv, because Tel Aviv started from nothing, it was sand. And the people founding it, we mentioned the Kiva Weiss, one of them last week, they had this vision that they want Tel Aviv to be this Hebrew city and to be a first of its kind. And they said, what's an appropriate pasuk? Well, God speaking, it's saying he's going to build, and they saw God's hand in helping them do this. So that's the pasuk they think is appropriate, the concept of rebuilding Eretz Yisrael. And Betulat Yisrael, Betula is a virgin, someone who hasn't been with a man. And the Chachamim explain that the same way a husband is excited to be with his wife for the first time, so too God is excited to be with Am Yisrael again. It's like being with them the first time, rebuilding them. So this is the pasuk. Where else is this pasuk? The symbol of Tel Aviv. Now, every city has a symbol. We spoke, I think, a year ago, around the time of Yom Yerushalayim, about Jerusalem's symbol with the lion and the olive branches. The symbol of Tel Aviv is this. The designer was Nachum Gutman, who was the same person who designed the mosaic. In 1925, the mayor of Tel Aviv came to him and said, hey, we want a symbol. What could you come up with? This is what he drew. We see a lighthouse with a rounded arch, and we see waves of the beach, which connects to Tel Aviv, and we see light coming out. And the thought behind it is that Tel Aviv is calling to all the people in exile, all the Jewish people, come back home, come to Tel Aviv. And we see the words from the Pasuk, Evnech v'nivnet. This was associated with it. Now, I want to also point out that it's in a Magen David, and that if you count the amount of stars, we see here 7 yellow stars. Why 7 stars? Because, I'm going to go back in a second. Theodor Herzl, he wrote his visions that he has for Israel. And one of the things he said is, when Israel has a flag, it should have 7 stars to represent the 7 work hours in the day. So that's what he decided. And Nachum Gutman included that in his design. So here is Gutman's original drawing. It was changed a bit, but not much. And you can find the symbol of Tel Aviv. It's really amazing. Even the Hebrew words, you see that they managed to catch that on the symbol. When you walk around in Israel, whatever city you're in, this is like a sewage cover. They have the symbol stamped on, and this is the symbol of Tel Aviv. So I wonder how many people, if I go up to and say, one, do you know what pasuk is on the symbol of Tel Aviv? First, you have to know what the symbol is and what the pasuk is. So it's like this whole education, right? You have Tanakh and the symbol of Tel Aviv. In 2000, I believe, Tel Aviv said, let's do a new symbol. And they got rid of the old one of Gutman's symbol that had all this meaning behind it in the pasuk, and this is what they drew. It's similar, look how similar it is to New York symbol, skyscrapers in the background as the symbol, and this is what they drew. Then later on in 2009, they said, let's do another new symbol. Tel Aviv was celebrating 100 years since its founding, and this was the symbol they had for a full year. You see, it's really, really different. It's colorful, and it represents all the different segments of the population and people of Tel Aviv coming together and uniting. And then people said, you know what, but how could we get rid of the original symbol of Tel Aviv? So you see all the way small in the corner in the left is the Tel Aviv original symbol. They still have the Hebrew words, but it's tiny, tiny, tiny. So you would have to know about it in order to know what it is. So now this is the official symbol that's used everywhere. This colorful new modern one, and this old original symbol. So Tanakh in unexpected places in Tel Aviv. This is the flag of Tel Aviv, which still uses the old symbol. Now I want to address something I was saying before, how Tel Aviv's reputation today is very different than it originally was, and the city really has so much more. I Googled flag of Tel Aviv. I was lucky I found this, because really what came up, almost every single image that Google Images brought was gay pride flags, and like, that's not Tel Aviv's flag. Maybe it's accepting towards it today, but it's not Tel Aviv's flag. And I think it's a shame that that's like now became the stamp of the city, because there's really so much more to it. One of the questions that I brought last week and this week, and I want to talk for a few minutes about this and expand, was to what degree do we preserve memories and artifacts from the past? In Tel Aviv today, there are a lot of buildings that need to be repaired that kind of look like this, and they're very historic. And the question that the city has is, do we destroy this historic building? And we already know they destroyed two things. They destroyed the water tower and built a fountain instead. They destroyed the school, and that became the symbol of the organization of preserving buildings, was this school, because they said, what a mistake, how could we destroy it? Now, there are other buildings like that. So what do we do? Now, what are some of the issues in this discussion? One, Tel Aviv is very, very expensive real estate. And in a little area where you have one house, if you knock down the house, you can get a skyscraper. And think of all the rent you're getting from the stores or the people that are living there. So why waste this little land on this house? So that's one, money concern. Two is sometimes it costs so much money to preserve a building that it's easier to just, I guess there's another money concern. It's always comes down to money. Just knock it down. It's much cheaper to knock it down than it is to preserve it. So let's just do that. Three, cities don't really have money for this. A city has a budget and they want to allocate money to certain things. They don't really have the budget for preserving old houses. No city has money for it. And they don't really want to, in their eyes, they don't want to waste the money on this because there's so many other things, schools, sanitation, streets, that they want to deal with. So that's another issue. If there was special money towards preserving it, I'm sure they would run to do it more, but there's not. So every single building, there's a question. Everything always comes down to money about it. Now, a very creative solution that people do, they have done with certain buildings, is they say, okay, there's a guy that has this project and wants to build a skyscraper. And right next to the skyscraper is one of these small houses that's very historic. Maybe it's Bauhaus style or another reason. So will tell the guy that's building the skyscraper that he could only do it on the condition that he preserves this building. And that's how they kind of tag along these small houses with the tall building. So that's one way they get around it. But it really is a question. And if we say in Tel Aviv, it's a question. I mean, how old is the oldest thing in Tel Aviv? We said the city was founded in 1909. I mean, if I'm getting all Tanakh here, they actually do have, there is archaeology in Tel Aviv. They have stuff from the time of the Pelishtim. The Pelishtim were always Bnei Israel's enemy throughout the Navi. So they did find some things there. But the Bible really happened in Yehuda and Shomron, what's known as the West Bank, not so much in Tel Aviv. So it still is a question, but a more modern question. The real question is in Yerushalayim, because you dig by accident and you find the whole tons of things. So do you cover it up because you want to build a restaurant because there's modern people that want to eat, or do you leave it? So that's really always something that people are grappling between. And I like taking this question and applying it to my life, because people have different issues with throwing things out. I think I mentioned last week that I still have my report cards, stored in my mother's house, my report cards from first grade. Do I throw them out? I'm way past first grade. I'm, God willing, going to have my own kids. Or do I keep it because it was part of my past? I don't know. And I think it's interesting to confront our past and what we keep and what we don't. And we have it in our own lives, and we also have it in a larger scale in Tel Aviv. So that's that question. I want to summarize now and highlight the places that I recommend to visit. So we said that Tel Aviv started out with 66 families, and it was the first Hebrew city where everyone's speaking in Hebrew and Hebrew work. We mentioned some reasons to come to Tel Aviv. Now, none of the reasons that I listed, and maybe there were more, were the reasons that earned Tel Aviv its place on the World Heritage Site. We said it earned its place because of the unique architecture there. Tel Aviv has a lot of styles of architecture. One is eclectic, where we have styles from everything, East, West, Greek, Roman, all mixed together. And then we said that the world moved more towards, hey, why are we wasting our time with all this? Let's just be very practical and minimalist. And this new movement was called the Modern International Style, nicknamed the Bauhaus, based on a school that taught it. And we spoke about some of the features that we have built on pillars, the windows, flat roof. And we said Tel Aviv has although other places in the world also have examples, Tel Aviv has a very large collection concentrated in one place. We said that there's a Bauhaus center in Tel Aviv. So you can go and visit it, and they give special tours and books and galleries and lectures and things if this interests you. Whether or not you're a student of archaeology, I think it's cool to expand our minds. And this is something I want to sign up for, to learn even more about it. He said Tel Aviv also takes advantage of this, and every year they have a week where the city is kind of up all night and things are open late, and they have festivals and they're celebrating this aspect of the city. We saw where I had a beautiful lunch with them. Like, hey, this is a nice fountain. Let me sit there. Little did I know how much history it had behind it, commemorating the water tower that was once there and the founders of Tel Aviv, and the Pasok, which surprised me, which I then found out is in more places than just this memorial. This is the Pasuk on Tel Aviv's original symbol, representing the hope to rebuild Eretz Israel, even in Tel Aviv. And so the symbol is a lighthouse. I think it's such beautiful imagery, calling all the people to come and live in Eretz Israel, and new places to visit. So the new places that I recommend, I bolded. One, I think, to take a tour of the architecture of Tel Aviv. I also think that where the fountain is, so everything is walking distance. It's on a strip called in Hebrew Shderot Rothschild, which is like very famous center, restaurants and things like that. I don't know how many are kosher, but it's just a cool strip to be on. So even like going to visit the fountain, I think, is a cool idea. And also to New Task, and the next time I go to Tel Aviv, which actually might be this weekend, I'm going to be looking out for it. I'm going to be looking out for flags of Tel Aviv, and I'm going to also be looking down at benches or the sewer covers to see the symbol of Tel Aviv, the old and the new. So if I go back to how I opened this class, how I opened last class, that Tel Aviv is not a place that I was particularly happy that my in-laws are moving to. I'd say I still wish they lived in Penei Kedem, where they used to live, where I got married. However, I really do have a new appreciation of Tel Aviv and all the city has to offer. And I am going to continue learning about Tel Aviv, and maybe we'll have Tel Aviv part 3 later on in the year, because I think it's a shame when we, any city, whether it's Tel Aviv or any other place in Israel, I think it's a shame when we really narrow it down to this city is only this. It's not only this, it has so much and has a rich place. And look how excited I am talking about a city, and I'm like, yeah, I don't like it so much. So all of a sudden I have so much more than is just beach and bars. So spread the word about Tel Aviv. Come visit Tel Aviv when you come to Israel, hopefully soon, and have a wonderful day. Thank you all for being here.